Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. I've got laryngitis, but I'm pushing on because I've got Amit Segal as well. Amit is one of the most influential, if not the most influential journalist in Israel. He is sort of a combination of Brit Hume and Matt Continetti, for those of you who want to place him in the American spectrum. Serious guy, very well respected by the center and the left, but definitely on the center right. I like to say Nadav Eyal is Dan Balls and Haviv is Charles Krauthammer, but Amit's the guy who actually knows the politics and does the reporting. Amit, welcome. I want to ask you at first, do Israeli talk show hosts actually read the books when they do the interviews with the authors?
No, first of all, thanks for the compliments. Usually the joke says that they read the cover, at least.
Yeah. Well, I actually read the book. I inhaled it, in fact. And so I think we're going to have to do this twice. We'll get part one done today. Bibi Netanyahu told you after the horrors of 10/7, it's recounted on page 202 in a call at 4 a.m. Listen to me, listen well, never go into politics. So, Amit, he told you that. He must have been thinking you were going to go into politics. Are you ever going to go into politics?
So I'll tell you something. There is an Israeli peculiarity, according to which one-fifth of the Israeli parliament, the Knesset, consists of former journalists. Now, I think that in the entire US Senate, there isn't a single former journalist. But in Israel, since we are so news addict, because news is part of the existence of the country, because security crises happen on a daily, weekly basis, so gradually, once you report the news enough time, people actually confuse between you and the information you gather. So if you report about security, it makes you fit for office for the defense ministry. If you report politics, you can become a politician. So for your question, it's not something that I'm considering as we speak. But for me, what was more interesting was, yeah, you got me.
Good political
No,
answer. Good political answer.
uh, you're sharp.
Uh,
No, but what I'm trying to say is that Netanyahu is one of the most experienced politicians in the Western world. However, if you were to ask Prime Minister Netanyahu, what's your profession to write on your business card? He would say statesman, not politician. For him, politics is only the process, not the policy itself. However, I think he enjoys the process. And when he told me that 2 days after October 7th, for me it was a shock because it proved me something that I suspected, but I was not sure about. That every prime minister's term always ends with a tragedy. And Netanyahu was no exception.
it's not over yet, but you're right about thus far. There is a. Will he overcome that in the next elections, do you think, or will he be mercilessly beaten up over 10/7?
I'm surprised that it's even a question because from Israel's history, what could be learned till October 7th was that a security failure would necessarily lead to a failure in terms of the election. The Israeli public cares mainly not about economy like in the States or in the UK, but about security because it touches the very existence of the country. I think what people really should understand about Israel is that no matter where you are in Israel as we speak, in Jerusalem, like myself, or in Haifa, Tel Aviv, Sderot, you are always 80 minutes the most by car from someone, a terrorist with a rifle, an RPG missile, or a bomb that wants to kill you specifically. So, and usually it's less than 80 minutes, as we all learned on October 7th. So, if someone failed to actually live up to his standards to keep the country's safety, it would necessarily lead him to lose the election. However, I guess that Netanyahu's survival so far emanates from the fact that he was responsible not only for the failure of October 7th, but for the achievements that followed the attack in Iran, on Iran, the defeating Hezbollah, winning Hamas, bringing back the hostages, the fall of Syria. So I would say it's too early to call.
Too early to call. Now, I mean, I like this book so much. I sent it to Dr. Larry Arnn, president of Hillsdale College, and I said, you'll get in the introduction a comparative analysis of the United Kingdom, the United States, and Israeli politics. And by far, we've got the best system, I think, the Americans, because yours is crazy and doesn't have a written constitution. Britain has a constitution that's unwritten. But did you intend that? Did you intend to write a comparative study of the three systems in 30 pages? It's really brief.
Thank you so much. Well, I studied in the UK some 15 years ago, and my family is from the States, although my Israeli accent doesn't hint at this. But I always had hard times explaining my family or my fellow students what is this Israeli system? And when you try to explain something to someone, always use local terms for explaining a new phenomenon. So I tried to explain them that the Likud is like the conservatives or the Republican Party, and I failed. So I said, I'll sit down, I'll try to get into American shoes, and I'll try to explain them all the peculiarities. And I think even Israelis are not fully aware of the complexity of the system.
It reminded me when I was done with that of that famous line about the British Empire that it was acquired in a fit of absent-mindedness. Your political system was acquired in a fit of utter desperation. They just had to get something done, so David Ben Gurion came up with this system. And you've tried to
Exactly.
change it, I learned, a couple of times in the course of reading It's Noon, the call at 4 a.m. And nobody is really committed to changing it because it's been working decently. Is that fair? Do you ever expect a major overhaul?
I expect it, but it's not going to be the American system. The Israeli society is complex. It consists of a minority that officially, part of it, oppose the very existence of the country. And it consists of immigrants from 72 countries, most of which the lion's share is not democratic. So you have to create something that would give everyone a voice. Now, on the axis of representation and governability, those are the two axes of every democratic system. The Israeli system definitely, obviously belongs more to the representation over the governability. And I think we should actually move the meter a bit to something in the middle, because Israel is a country that cannot be governed. I'll give you an example. If you analyze the capacity of the prime minister's office, the prime minister himself is way stronger than any U.S. president, because prime ministers in Israel control the parliament. President Trump, most of the time, does not control the Congress. But in Israel, it's the other way around. However, President Trump knows that he's here till January 21st, 2029, no matter what. Whereas Prime Minister Netanyahu always knows that on Monday at 4 p.m., his government can fall, because this is the time in the week of the no confidence vote. So if you're a prime minister in Israel, you have to bear in mind two things simultaneously. One is top diplomatic efforts, negotiating between Zelensky and Putin, talking to President Trump, handling the war, and at the very same time, you have to hear the voice of the ticking clock to Monday at 4 p.m. And prime ministers, they tend to forget one of the two ingredients, fell faster than they thought.
Well, there are so many stories of falling and failing in here. I want to ask you a hypothetical, Amit. You've covered all these prime ministers now, and you don't do it chronologically, which I appreciate, by the way. It makes the reader work a little bit harder, but that's good for the reader. Taking Ben Gurion and Netanyahu off the table, if Amit Segal was going to be sentenced to life in a cell with one of these prime ministers, and we'll take Golda Meir off the table as well, which of the others would you say, yeah, put me in with that guy for the rest of my life?
Well, if cigarettes are allowed, so I guess Prime Minister Rabin. He was a shy leader, but he had I mean, he was someone very interesting to talk to. If cigarettes are not allowed, I would say that as a person, someone to spend your time, someone that is not going to steal your food, Yair Lapid. But in terms of
Ah,
history, Menachem Begin. Menachem Begin was the founding father of the Israeli right wing, and he was a commander of a Jewish underground that fought against
yeah.
the British mandate. So I
I
guess. Begin would suffice.
I did not know until I read your book that he fell into a profound depression after his wife died. I really had no idea. I don't know how. I follow Israeli politics like I follow British politics. They're our two most important allies, so I follow them very, very closely. But I had no idea that he actually sunk deeper and deeper into depression. And your story of when he announced his resignation, that's wild. Is that well and widely known in Israel?
Um, Depends how old are you. Uh, People who are older than 50 might remember it. And the amazing thing about Menachem Begin was that he fought for 29 consecutive years and 8 consecutive election campaigns to become a prime minister. And then once he was elected, the last year of his term was spent in him wishing to not being a prime minister. And when he left office with the eternal words in Hebrew, I can't do this job anymore. אינני יכול עוד in Hebrew, he resigned and went to his home and never left the door, the door. He never left out of the door of his
Wow.
of his of his apartment.
What a remarkable story. People, that's one reason they should read The Call at 4 a.m. Let me talk to you about Tommy Lapid. Of course, I've followed Yair Lapid over the last many years in his rise and his brief prime ministership, but I'd never heard of his father, and that's a wild kind of character. He sounds like a wild kind of character. Was he well liked and just endured, or was he um, disparaged and distance given to him?
It depends what time of his career. He was by far someone to spend a life sentence with, full of
Oh,
amazing stories. I'll give you just one story, which is extremely unpolitically correct. He was a Holocaust survivor, and then he was invited to the new to watch the new movie Holocaust by Claude Lanzmann. It was a 9 hour long movie, and it was screened for the first time in Tel Aviv. And then Claude Lanzmann, after the first screening, asked him, "Well, how was the movie?" So Tommy replied, "The Holocaust was faster for me."
wow.
Um, so, so what I'm trying to say is that Tommy was a bigger than life figure, but he was very arrogant from time to time. And his son Yair, it was the all Israeli guy. Yair was the Marlboro guy of Israel. And when Lapid, the father, was about to pass away, he called his son, 2 generations of journalists in the family, and he told him, Yair, I was only deputy prime minister, but you are going to be a prime minister. And Lapid became a prime minister ultimately.
Now, I want you to unpack for the American public that's listening. I thought it was a very important sentence. The Israeli Center is not a place, but a state of mind, one located between Judaism and democracy, nationalism and liberalism. So, is there a Israeli center?
Yes, I think most of the Israelis, I'll put it differently, that the most popular video or the most popular tweet from Israel in 2025 wasn't about Gaza or Lebanon. It was just 20 seconds of Israelis in the Tel Aviv beach. And all of a sudden, you see something which is similar in the middle of the Iran war. And all of a sudden, the world could see that Israel is not a messianic state or a pariah state or New Sparta or a religious Jerusalem. It's just a Western democracy full with people who love life, who love to their families and restaurants, and love to spend time with their beloved ones. And they happen to find themselves in the world's most dangerous corner, and yet they succeed of being both Athens and Sparta simultaneously. So yes, the Israeli Center does exist. And if you don't believe
Now,
it, you should come to Israel.
I've been there twice, but not long enough to dive into this. For example, you distinguish national religious people from Orthodox people from ultra Orthodox people, and it's a revelation to me that these distinctions are so fine. And Shosh, I had no idea. I hope I'm pronouncing things right. Shosh, I had no idea the pivotal role they played or Derry played. I don't think any of your allies actually know the complexity of Israeli politics. Do you think the Biden White House, the Bush White House, the Obama White House, or the Trump White House really knows Israel?
They thought they knew. You know, there is a story about Israeli journalists visiting the White House only to get lectured about the different streams within Shas. I don't think the
Ah.
White House is aware of, peculiarities in the French political system, for instance. But Israel was always strong. But my purpose in the book was to make Americans understand that Israel is not a black box that spits decisions about security or wars or military operations from time to time. It's a very complex society with contradicting values, Judaism, democracy, being a Westerner but in the Middle East, trying to live in a neighborhood that speaks Arabic but thinking more about London than Gaza. And these complexities are very important for people in order to understand, for instance, that their problem is not necessarily with Benjamin Netanyahu. If they have problems with Netanyahu, so from time to time they are going to have problems with other Israelis as well. And if they have problems with the government's way of thinking, they should think about who are the millions that support this very same policy and trying to talk to them rather than to an imaginary state of Israel that never existed. You know, when I read Thomas Friedman, for instance, from the New York Times, I always think that I guess I would like this Israel as well, but it does not exist. It ceased to exist many,
So
many
now
years ago.
I found the one guy who reads Thomas Friedman. It's Amit Segal. Who knew? Let
I
me
don't
ask you
really.
when you sit down at the desk each night. I guess you're Channel 12. What do you think of is your job? What is your job as a analyst on Israeli television?
Okay, so first of all, the most basic rule is to report the news. However, we know that phones, internet, Telegram, WhatsApp are way faster these days than television. So I think it's about giving meaning. It's about explaining people a complex situation in 60 seconds, in 90 seconds. And I would like to add something more than this, because in Israel, Channel 12 represents something that I think vanished in the United States. Um, and this is something, or it's a news channel that is supposed to be broadcasting to every single Israeli. In the States, you have CNN for the left, Fox News for the right wing, etc., etc. In Israel, Channel 12 still tries to be the all Israeli channel, something like Walter Cronkite in the 60s in the States. And I think it's a very important mission, but because if we cannot hold the center in Israel, we're doomed because the United States can allow itself, barely allow itself, this situation of divisiveness because you have two oceans protecting you and 10,000 nuclear ballistic missiles. Israel is a villa in the jungle, unprotected, and we cannot allow ourselves to be split into two different nations. So my mission is definitely speaking to each and every Israeli. So even if we do not agree, we can actually at least have the debate. Maybe it's biting off more than one can chew for one journalist or one channel, but I am still optimistic.
Well, when we set up part two of a call at 4 a.m., I want to get into Ehud Barak, Ehud Olmert. There are so many interesting people in here, but I want to conclude by saying when you walk around Israel, you're on every night. Do people stop and argue with you? Do they stop and compliment you? Do they ignore you? What happens to someone like you or Nadav or anything like that on an Israeli street?
A 200 feet walk takes something like 15 minutes because everyone has something to say. Everyone knows you. So if it's in Jerusalem, I guess I'll get more compliment. If it's in Tel Aviv, people might shout. But this is part of the game. I mean, to be honest, no one chooses to be on television only for the sake of journalism. You want to be famous, you want to be someone in the world. So I'll tell you a story about my little girl here, Eliana,
Yes,
who
she's cute.
refuses to
She
go to
shows up
sleep.
in the back. Yeah,
She
she
refuses
won't
to
go to
go to
sleep.
sleep. Yeah, so this is Eliana. תגידי שלום.
Hello, Eliana.
שלום.
Hi,
So
Eliana.
when Eliana goes to the kindergarten, one day her friend Goni said, I miss my father, he's at work. So Eliana tells her, so open the television. Uh, so
Ah,
she thinks that everyone is on television, and every Israeli thinks that they know me in person because I'm on their television every night.
well, I think a lot of Americans now do too because of Dan Senor's Call Me Back. I encourage you to keep doing that. I think it's been maybe the healthiest thing that's come out of the awfulness of 10/7 is that more Americans are trying to dig into what's going on in our most important ally in the region and the equal of any of our allies in the world. The book is a call at 4 a.m. It's fabulous. You'll inhale it. And Amit will come back for part two because there's just not enough to do in part one. Amit Segal, follow him on X at Amit_Segal, or go to AmitSegal.net and get his free daily newsletter, a call, Israel at noon. It's noon in Israel. That's what it is, noon in Israel. Amit, thank you. Talk to you again
Thank
soon.
you so much. Thanks.